Oh, so exciting. Good morning and hello and welcome to everybody joining us today from wherever you are around the world. I am so excited and humbled that everybody is here today. I also want to remind everyone who's joining us from wherever you are that we are recording this and it will be published at the end. So for those who might have missed the live version, there's also a bunch of links and details available in the description and in the comments. So feel free to leave any comments or ask any questions and we'll get to those at the end. So before we go any further with any more faffing around, I would love to introduce the incredible woman guiding today's Q&A. I met Ginny about 3 years ago. I was doing the silliest podcast with another incredible woman, Gina, about toxic workplaces. And we interviewed Ginny and it was like besties at first sight. Ginny is a keynote speaker, a #1 best-selling author herself, fancy schmancy, a coach, and the host of Unsubscribe with Ginny Preem podcast. Her work focuses on something I think we all need, which is being intentional about what we give our time and energy to. Her keynote, Unsubscribe, Why Letting Go is the Secret to Getting Ahead, is really around helping people create clarity and momentum in their lives and careers. And I am genuinely glad to have her with me today. And I wouldn't want anyone else in this situation. So if you've not come across her work before, I really encourage you to go have a look at her podcast and connect with her. She's really cool and her work is amazing. So I will hand it over to you.
Well, I don't know that I'm super cool, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I was so honored to be a part of this with you. Your book launch day is so exciting. It's such a big day. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Well, I do think that it was so kind of you to introduce me, but I think that you should introduce yourself as well. I know.
Well, I feel like I'm just so boring. Okay, so I would say, hi, my name is Nicola. I am a health, safety, and risk professional. I've been doing that for many decades. I am also neurodivergent and a leader in, the space that I work in. And for me, it is so important to make sure that we're doing safety and risk from a people-centric or people-centered focus. And I think this is where that book kind of stemmed from, was I felt like we weren't looking at people first and we weren't considering how people were kind of experiencing the workplace. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I just finished my Master's of Law, so that's pretty cool. Graduating today. Yay!
Congratulations. That's massive.
Well, so you say. And yeah, I've been doing, I guess, risk and safety for almost 2 decades, which is wild for me to think about, that I've stuck to one career for like 2 decades. That's crazy. Maybe like a third career now with writing books.
Phenomenal. And speaking of the book, tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, I'd say a little bit about it. The awesome thing about this book is it kind of weaves together really scientific information, and each chapter can be read on its own, because I've been intentionally repetitive, so that way you can open up a chapter and be like, oh, I only need this chapter, let's go. And it's supposed to be a conversation starter. So we're not diagnosing anyone. We're not, unless you're my partner, bless his heart. We're not diagnosing anyone. We're not trying to put people in boxes. We're trying to start conversations where potentially at work you may not have had those conversations in the past. And I think it's one of these books where you can use it as almost like a reference point. And I don't feel, unless the research changes dramatically, I don't feel it's one of these that'll age either, because it has really key, helpful, practical tips on how to start those conversations, either with your manager or with your team who may be neurodivergent as well.
So it's a little bit of like a reference guide, right? And you can pick it up at any point in time, kind of read it as one whole, but also pick it up with individual chapters. I really like that. So it's like a guide.
I
And
would say so, yeah.
yeah, and I like how you said it's not about diagnosing people. And how important do you think it is for people to approach this book with almost like a sense of curiosity, right? Like curiosity, seeking to understand.
Oh, for sure. I feel like if you are in the situation, let's say, for example, you're a neurodivergent employee and your manager isn't, dealing well with whatever accommodations you may need. This is a really great way to help bridge that gap, because there's science that shows that neurotypical to neurotypical communication is really great, and neurodivergent communication to neurodivergent is really great. But there's a mismatch between neurotypical and neurodivergent. So I'm hoping it's kind of got a couple of helpful hints to bridge that gap in the middle.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Why this book and who did you write it for?
Whew. Who did I write? I'd say, those are both really, really big questions. I wrote the book for for the first part, kind of any late diagnosed, kind of high masking leaders who are sitting in senior roles thinking, kind of, is it just me, or am I the one who finds this like leadership thing really weird? Like, am I just stuck in a loophole of weird leadership situations? Why is everybody doing really okay at this and I'm just struggling? And I think I wanted something where those people could have language, evidence, and stories that kind of validate what they already know, and that it's not this personal failing, that actually the entire system was set up to be a very different leadership experience. And secretly, I hope the book also lands in the hands of like chief executives or board chairs or heads of people and culture, where those are the people that shape the systems and policies and expectations. And I think even if a handful of them read it and they decided to redesign how leadership is selected or supported or measured, then the book's done more than just like one job. It's done quite an awesome system change job, and that would be amazing. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the key reason.
I love it. So having this vision of this book helping to make a difference and change the way teams and organizations communicate and work together.
Yeah.
That's incredible, Nicola. All right. What do you think was the hardest chapter for you to write and why?
I think any chapter that spoke about me personally, anything where I had to write about myself or my vulnerabilities or kind of the messy reality of burnout and unmasking, like from a technical perspective, from a technical writing perspective, it wasn't hard. There was research. Please, we can all do that. It was hard because I had to go back into like tricky memories or, difficult situations at work that made me feel uncomfortable, and writing about my son as well, and kind of fast forwarding then, kind of going from these really vulnerable moments and then into this, strong leader years later. It's like really weaving those two things together was really difficult, because nobody wants to kind of lift the box and show your vulnerabilities. Nobody wants to do that.
Who would do something so crazy, like write a book about a traumatic time in their life and put it out into the world?
I know, Jenny. Like, who would do that? If you haven't read Jenny's book, it's really awesome.
So speaking of your own experiences, like how did your personal experiences, your lived experiences show up in the pages? And just when you were talking about kind of opening up the box and like unlocking some of those memories that you had, writing the book, doing the research, going back to those experiences, were there any moments that you looked at with the knowledge and information that you have now that you're now sharing with the world, which is incredible? Do you view any of those memories or experiences differently now?
I think maybe all of them. You know, like you said, like how does your lived experience show up, right? Like how does that kind of embody in the book? And I think, you know, even when I'm not naming myself directly, it's kind of everywhere. And, you know, it's woven throughout the entire space. You know, while at work, you know, I'm explaining how my nervous system is fried, and there's sections where I describe like the physical sensations of masking or unmasking, or how I talk, you know, about my mum in the book as well. And, you know, so often just as a leader, silently falling apart while, you know, portraying this really strong outer kind of, and really strong outer, complex, focused, detail orientated person that looks like a leader. And you know, it's kind of like weaving in those quieter realities and talking about like auditory sensitivity and, you know, the load of constantly editing your emails so you don't sound too direct, or even the grief of realizing you spent years and years trying to achieve a sense of belonging that just doesn't come because you don't fit in. And it's finding that group of people. So it's, you know, it's like almost this grief of looking back once you know this information, and the more you research about yourself and others in the same situation, you almost feel like this heavy sense of grief. So for me, it's like the lived experience there is behind every question, you know, I ask of the people that are going to read this. You know, I'm not standing outside the system looking in at it. I'm standing in the system with you. Like, it's weird in there. And I think that's essentially how it's changed my view quite a bit as well. It's like, oh shit, I'm actually right in there. I'm in the thick of it with people.
I think everything you said was just so relatable. I feel like, especially as women in leadership, and men too, but I feel like especially women in leadership, there's this feeling that you have to show up how you believe other people think you should show up, not authentically as yourself. And so my hope is that people will get kind of a glimpse of, oh no, actually, like you're great just the way that you are. And there's some tools and tips in here to help you kind of work through that. Love
I
that.
would hope so. I would hope so.
Okay. So when we think about leadership, right, like I think that's one of the myths, is that you have to show up a certain way. But there's all different types of great leaders. And I also think it's sort of evolved and changed over what good leadership or like what success looks like today than it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So in the book, what myths about leadership and neurodivergence do you hope that your book challenges?
I think one of the biggest myths for me from, you know, a safety and a risk perspective is the myth that neurodivergent people are a risk to be managed rather than a source of insight where, you know, the systems are already unsafe or unfair. This is not about a risk or a risky situation. This is just a different, you know, way of thinking rather than, oh, this person needs to be managed. I think the other one is around that good leaders are always, composed and charismatic and emotionally neat with a little bow on the top. But many of the best leaders I have worked with are, often intense or sensitive or really feeling and occasionally chaotic and human. And I think there's also, that all kind of ties in then with this myth that there's masking and overperforming isn't just being professional. Like, for many of us, that masking is a survival strategy, and it eventually turns into burnout, health issues, and essentially a complete loss of self. So, it's really important to start kind of debunking those myths so that we can really start changing the system for everybody. I want people who read this book to really question who we are or who we center as the ideal leader and who we quietly expect to, kind of put yourself into a box to be tolerated, because you're too loud or too much or too different or your thinking is too chaotic, and it's really about how do we actually frame what that ideal leader looks like and how can we do that differently?
I love that. I'll tell you, like, one of the mistakes that I made as a leader in corporate leading teams was when I was a young manager, I looked to hire people like me. And I feel like that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made because a team is well-rounded, right? And so when you're talking about neurodivergence and different skill sets and different personality types, that's what makes a really great team is people that can bring different, like you can't have 10 super analytical people on a sales team or have 0 analytical people on a sales team, right? Like that balance is kind of what creates that harmony and makes a highly functioning team. And I think that's such a great insight that you shared just about perspective of different attributes that leaders can bring to teams and organizations. All right, so this is kind of a fun question.
Mm-hmm.
If your book had a
Yeah.
theme song, what would it be?
Oh, okay. I think, if anything, um, it would probably be that really kind of silly song, Brave, by Sarah Bareilles.
Mhm.
Um, Not because I feel brave all the time, just to be clear, but I think the book itself is about those really tiny kind of costly moments of courage that nobody really sees. And I think the moment you finally admit that you're kind of not coping, or the moment you tell a board chair that you're autistic and ADHD, and you're not going to pretend otherwise, or the moment you choose to lead in a way that's kinder, or even if the system around you is still really harsh, it's those teeny tiny little moments of honesty and bravery, and it's that groundswell transformation. So I think, if anything, I would say Brave by Sarah Bareilles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarah Bareilles. And I love that because that's actually one of sometimes on my podcast, I'll do rapid fire rounds at the end. And I ask people to talk about like when they were in this time of their lives before everything changed, what would be a theme song. And one of my guests picked that song. So I love that. Yeah, that's such a good one. That's a
It is a good
great
one.
one. Okay, so when we think about your readers and the people that are already ordering and picking up this book, and if you haven't ordered it yet, go grab your copy. We'll put a link to everything. You want to make sure that you grab this right away, post it, share it on social media. And of course, like coming from an author, what I have to tell you is how important reviews are. So please, when you order the book, leave Nicola a lovely review or rating once you order the book and you dive in. And maybe just even like, I think sometimes people think they have to, come up with this really novel, profound review. You can just say, it's great. It was helpful. You don't have to really overthink
Didn't
it.
suck.
Yes, it can be one sentence or just your favorite part or your favorite quote or your favorite story. You can share anything like that because that's what really helps people like Nicola and myself, but today is all about Nicola, but this is how it's going to help people find Nicola's book. So the more you buy, share, review, that helps other people find the work. So I just wanted to throw that out there because you might not have. So I need to make sure that I'm here pumping you up and getting people to do what we came here to do today. Now, speaking of the readers,
Okay.
How can they use what's in the book and bring that back to their workplaces to make it more safe and inclusive?
All right. I would say don't read the book as a story. Use it as a workbook, essentially. As I mentioned earlier, each chapter is written to be standalone. So if you open it up and you just want to learn how different people work at work, open it up to the chapter about what different types there are in the workplace and what those mean for the work that you might be doing. So use the chapters as prompts for those honest conversations with your teams, with your manager. It's also a really good tool to map psychosocial hazards that you may recognize. You can ask who's carrying some invisible labor. Look at your leadership frameworks and ask, like, who actually assumes the default here? Because maybe this system that we have in place at our workplace is not the one that uplifts our true leaders. And, there's practical tools in there, there's reflection questions, and you can use it in leadership programs or team days or workshops. Just start small, change how you run performance reviews, and specifically for ADHD people. The big thing there is around rejection sensitivity. So if you get a really bad performance review, for example, or even an average performance review, and you're feeling that really intensely and emotionally, I have an entire section on how do we rebuild that relationship after it's been broken because of the way you see the feedback or the review that you've received. Even if it, in your mind, it was absolutely devastating, it could have actually been quite neutral. But it's all about how you can repair that afterwards as well. So I think, using it as kind of a workbook to create these more inclusive and safer workplaces, rather than, building them on this already kind of laid in or embedded process, we can build it on everyday decisions, and we can, get to adjust those small levers, and then hopefully it does its job as a book.
Well, I think that's important. It's kind of giving people permission. And I want to make sure I understood and heard this correctly, but it sounds like there's parts of this book that give people permission to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Because just because things have always been done a certain way, it doesn't mean that's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And so you're giving different ideas to spark having more productive conversations in the workplace.
I would hope so. I'm very hopeful that that will happen. Granted, that won't happen everywhere. It's not the magic pill, and it's very dependent on your organization. But I'm hoping that it kind of provides you enough information or enough research to say, actually, I can have this conversation with my manager in a far better way, or my manager can understand me a little bit better. I think if we can just help one person in the workplace, I feel like my job's done.
Well, you're already helping more than one, but that is your imposter syndrome checking in right there. And so this is going to help many. Okay.
Okay.
So that said, I think they just need to be brave, right? To go back to the theme song,
Yeah.
to have these conversations. And sometimes it's having the idea of why they want to, but they don't necessarily know how. And so you're giving them the tools, the how to have those conversations, which is really, really helpful and powerful. If readers were going to take away one message from this book, what would you hope it to be?
I think that sometimes it's really important for them to understand that the problem is actually how we framed leadership. It's been it's been around for decades, and this concept has been very paternalistic and very, I want to say misogynistic, but it's a very narrow version of humanity. And I think it's so important to understand that this problem means that we're missing out on incredible leaders every day who don't match that design. And so if there's one message, it's, like you mentioned earlier, it's permission. It's permission to stop performing a version of leadership that is essentially slowly destroying your health, or permission to name those psychosocial risks in the workplace instead of kind of internalizing them as your own failure, or permission for the organization to admit that maybe psychological safety is not just a poster or a program, or how we treat people who are different, and how we're honest about that, and how we just stop kind of pretending that leadership is this one thing and we start thinking about it as like different things. I think if that's the message we can take away, essentially, is that it was designed in this one way, but if we can look at it from a different perspective, then that's the message I would like people to take away.
How much of it do you feel like is approaching it from a place of, this isn't about pointing fingers, it's about providing solutions?
Yeah, very much so. I think that's pretty much the entire first part of the book, I think, is let's deconstruct what's currently there. Here is what we've been taught for the last billion decades. Here are all the things that are normalized, that kind of, and I think we both love a cult, that kind of cultish, charismatic behavior. People love that. And I think, kind of breaking down what those actually look like in a different kind of view or a different perspective, I think is really important, because it shows people that actually maybe, even though it was the same for hundreds of years, it's not the same now, and we don't need it to be, and let's stop pretending it is.
Yeah. Okay, so there is so much good stuff to dive into in this book. Like, if you haven't already put an order in your cart, like, now's the time. You've got to get this book. It's going to be so helpful for so many people. I love that you are kind of tying the two ends of the two sides together, right? Like, this isn't just for neurodiverse people. This isn't just for I forget what you called it before, neurotypical people, right? Like, this is for everybody to have a better understanding so that we can collaborate better, communicate better, lead better, perform better at work. And this is incredible. So, curious, have you already been thinking about another book, book 2?
Maybe. I'll be honest. I've already drafted up book number 2. It was actually it was your suggestion. I'm blaming you for this, because you came up with such a good cover for the book that I was like, oh my God, I need that in my life. So I've actually written the book based on the cover.
Phenomenal. Well, we can't wait to see that. The cover of this book is stunning. The colors, the concept, everything is just beautiful inside and out. And I can't wait for many, many, many readers and leaders to get this book in their hands. So how do we find it? How do we get it? Do we have some Q&A that we need to address?
We can do Q&A. I don't see any questions though, so sad for us.
Okay.
But that's okay. I know lots of people will not be awake at this time of the morning, but you can get it on Amazon. It's available on pretty much all the Amazons, which is great. I know the hardcover, I've got a copy of the hardcover version, and the hardcover is only available from Amazon.com. But Amazon.com.au has a ton of the softcover available as well. And I'll share the links in our comments below and make sure that everybody has access to the links as well.
Perfect. That will make it very easy to just click and add to cart.
Yes. And do you want to see something really fancy? Look at this.
Yes.
There's a QR code in the corner now, and you can scan the QR code and it takes you straight to Amazon.com.
Amazing.
How fun is that?
I love it. And also, you can find out more about Nicola at her website. So it's nicolaknobel.com, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And where can we find you, Ginny?
Oh, all my stuff is my name, Ginny Preem. So there's ginnypreem.com. All my socials are Ginny Preem. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Those are kind of my three main ones that I'm on. And then I also have a website, unsubscribeofficial.com, which gives a little bit more information. I've got some merch on there. And gives you a little bit more stuff about the podcast, and you can book me to speak there, all that good stuff. Thank you. But this is about you today. You and your book. I'm so excited for you and for all the readers to get their hands on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, exciting. There's no way to ask Q&As? No. How interesting. Well, there's the comments.
You got a comment?
Yeah, there was Alison, who is actually mentioned in the first part of the book with you. She said there's no way to ask Q&As, but
if you can make a comment,
you can ask a Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Just ask your question there.
Yeah. We'll pause for the questions.
Could pause for the questions. Also, if people do put them in the chat, will they show up after for people that watch the replay?
And we can even, add, show some of the comments as well.
Oh, look at that.
How fun is this tool? I love this tool.
Okay, I need glasses, and so there are two. Okay. Oh, there's nowhere to ask questions. No questions, just here to support. Oh, we love that. Delighted to be here. We are delighted that you are here. Oh, I know, so early. I asked, so this is before we got on, Nicola, you won't mind that I share this, but I was like, why this time of day? So I'm in the US, I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is right in the middle, towards the top. And for me, it was a great time. But I was like doing the math, because you and I have to navigate our conversations based on the 17-hour time difference. And I was like, why are you doing it? I wasn't doing the math correctly. I thought it was like 4:00 in the morning. And this is Nicola. She's like, I've got a busy day today. I've got a lot going on. So I had to get up and we had to do this extra early. And I was like, I love that commitment. Like her commitment to you and getting this content and this information and this resource in your hands, like that is a testament.
Well, and it was a legitimately busy day.
Yes.
It's my graduation today. It's my son's graduation today. It's the work Christmas party today. There is just all of the things happening today. And I'm also getting my hair done this morning so that I can look okay for the graduation pictures.
You do have a big day. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so it is a bonkers day today. I'm already exhausted and we haven't even started yet.
So another comment just came in that I think is important to talk about. So someone had commented that they're really looking forward to having the mini sound bites. When you think about that and the way that you describe the setup of the book, and that you can pick it up and you don't have to pick it up and read the whole thing you can read the whole thing from cover to back, but that you can pick it up and you get these little sound bites throughout. How important is that for people with autism, ADHD, Audhd, to have the information available to them in that type of a format? I have to imagine that was really intentional on your part.
It was. My hope is that I've put it into so many different formats that there is something for everyone, regardless of if you are neurodivergent or neurotypical. I'm hopeful that it is just there and accessible and thoughtful. I have to say, though, for LinkedIn, I am terrified of sharing the video sound bites that I do. I don't know why, but I have this like blocker between me and sharing videos on LinkedIn. I don't know what is going on there. I think I know it's in my head, but I feel like there's just this blocker between the two. But I think maybe I should start sharing more of those on there as well. Because, I did by accident I posted it to the wrong stream and it got really great feedback and engagement and people really resonated with it. So I think maybe I just need to kind of rip the Band-Aid on that.
So this is not a plug. This is designed to be useful and helpful. And I think it's really interesting how the synchronicity between this. My podcast guest last week is someone that helps leaders, CEOs, and business owners with how to show up authentically as themselves on social media. She talks a lot about LinkedIn because that is the professional site, and she shared some really, really good tips. So, and I know you're not alone. That's something that many, many people struggle with. Is how to show up authentically as yourself. And again, this goes back to what you talked about earlier of like the masking, right? Like you literally just admitted to a form of masking, like you have this block that you're being apprehensive about showing up as exactly who you are on this platform, which you have such a strong following on. People are coming there to see your content. So maybe put in the comments, do you want Nicola to put more video content out on LinkedIn? Because we have a lot of LinkedIn users.
We do. And they're so smart.
Yes. And I do think LinkedIn is going a little bit more to being accepting of video. I mean, especially for me as a keynote speaker, I do tend to put some of those clips out there, not as much of me talking to the camera per se, but I don't know. I think your people want it. So that's just me. It's 5:30 p.m. in the UK. Thank you for tuning in from the UK. So we've got New Zealand represented, we've got the US represented, the UK, we've got people from all over the world. And we are so appreciative that you're here to support Nicola and to get this amazing resource in your hands. Okay, what kind of issues do you see at work as a result of conflict and misunderstandings? Between neurotypical and neurodivergent.
Oh, so many.
A really good question. Thank you
It is a
for
really good question. And I think, okay, so there is a lot of science, as I mentioned, between those kind of communication channels. And, for example, autistic to autistic communicate really efficiently and really well. And there's this research that shows the level of communication between the same communication styles is essentially effective and there are no issues. It's when there's that mismatch between, communication styles where we start seeing kind of that mismatch. And the minute you have a mismatch in anything, you're going to have conflict, right? So you're going to potentially have someone who is very direct or very clear with what it is that they need or the information that they're passing. For example, an autistic person is saying, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and here are the 5 things that need to go with this. Whereas someone may take that as very direct or pushy or confrontational, where it's like, actually, no, I'm just delivering information to you. And I think, just personally, multiple times I have been quite direct, and I know that it's also a South African thing as well, is we're quite like brutalist with our directness. And my partner, bless his heart, he has had to kind of learn that I'm not being critical, or I'm not I'm not saying these things because I'm being asshole. I'm saying these things because, like, I'm just interested in the information. It's like, oh, are you emptying the dishwasher? And no, I'm just interested in whether or not you're emptying the dishwasher. I'm not like judging if you've emptied the dishwasher or not. I'm just working out if I need to empty the dishwasher or if you're still going to empty the dishwasher. There's no sarcasm. There's no, unintentional negativity there. But for neurotypical people, or potentially even people with ADHD, so now you've got this mismatch in neurotypes, you are going to read that as judgy, or like, girl, clean your own damn dishwasher, so just on a personal level, there's going to be those mismatches. And I think it's understanding that when you have clear, direct, or like information that you can't really misinterpret, I think that helps everybody, not just not just our neurodivergent people. It just helps everybody. It's like the universal helpfulness. So if you're clear about what you're trying to say or the message you're trying to say, I was actually saying again to my partner yesterday, I watched a presentation about a woman who was delivering some information to a group of us at work, and she only spoke in metaphors. And by like maybe 10 minutes into the presentation, I was like, I am not following this. Like, I have no idea. Like, I've heard so many metaphors. I don't know which one to pin the conversation on, because there were so many. And I was like, some of these don't match. Like, I'm confused. And I consider myself relatively smart, and I could not follow. So yeah, I think it causes that miscommunication. And do we need that? No. Like, let's just not have that. Let's just be open and communicative and clear, and we start eliminating that kind of conflict and misunderstanding.
Are you familiar with Brene Brown?
Yes, of course.
She talks a lot about vulnerability. So she has a saying that she says, clear is kind.
Yes.
And I think if you come to it from that perspective, right? Like, if someone is being very clear, that's kind. They want to be clear so that you understand. And when I was in corporate, one of the things that I did was I taught people conflict management. And what I love about it is it's something that you can implement at work, but it's also something that you can take home. And so I think so much of what you're talking about comes like from the perspective of having a curious mindset, being open and wanting to understand, and, like swapping judgment for, understanding, right? And curiosity. And when in conflict, because conflict is bound to arise, right? But it's then understanding how to navigate that conflict. And the model that I taught was, it was a triangle. It had 3 different colors. It was green, blue, and red. And blue just always kind of wants to keep the peace when there's conflict. Green retreats. And that's me. So I retreat in conflict because I want to gather my thoughts. I don't want to speak from a place of emotion. I want to understand the situation so that I can come to it with a clear perspective and not say anything I'm going to regret, because if I'm worked up, right? So I want to come to it from a place of calm. I want to be responsive and not reactive. Now, if you partner that up with a red, that's somebody that is going to get in your face and they want to resolve it right here, right now.
No thanks.
And for them, it's because they just want to resolve it and move on and not have the conflict hanging, right? So for me, I feel like that red is aggressive. For the red feels like I'm being evasive and ignoring it and not wanting to resolve the situation, right? So just that story right there, and that understand, like you think about just coming to it from a place of understanding and going, oh, okay, I know that person, they just want to resolve it. How do you then have that communication to say, this is where we're both at? And then that helps you create a game plan, right? And now you're helping do that kind of same situation, to go back to this person's question of, that miscommunication and conflict. You're giving it to us in a place of, how do these neurotypical and neurodiverse people handle the conflict, which is incredible. I think that's a gap that needs closed.
Yeah. Agree. Awesome. I also like that triangle. I want a triangle now. Show people where you are on the triangle.
Oh yeah, it's color coded. You would love it.
I would love it.
I have seen your color coded calendars.
True.
They're organized. I appreciate it.
I don't think you were expecting how organized I was going to be when you asked me to plan some stuff for you.
I had no idea. So I planned a trip. I got to visit Nicola in person earlier this year, and I was just like, hey, do you have some things to share? And she was like, so here's your agenda. And you're going to be here at this point and here at this point. But even with some of the things that happened, like we had a little mishap with one of the Airbnbs. We handled everything pretty well, I've got to
That
say.
Airbnb
We
mishap
rallied. We
was
rallied.
wild.
It was a pretty big mishap. Okay, we had a couple other. Okay, somebody had to hop off. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Does the book address how to navigate power dynamics for employees trying to advocate for themselves with managers who may not be coming from a place of curiosity?
Yes.
Sarah, we love that you were. Oh my gosh, that is a phenomenal.
That is so intense. And I think this is essentially the crux of the book, right? So I am very blessed. Shout out to my manager, Louise, who's currently on vacation in the UK. Shout out to her because she's really cool. Before her, though, I had this manager who was absolutely bonkers, like the most toxic manager I think I've ever had in my entire existence. And they were not curious and they were not interested in anything that wasn't, framed in their own thinking. And I think that really helped me define like how I would pitch like in my mind, this is who I imagined when I was like, okay, how do we make that person understand what's going on with me? So in the book, I've got a couple of sections where I kind of break down what it actually means or what it feels like to be that manager with no curiosity. And I also break down like how, as a person with that manager, how would you approach that conversation? How would you even start considering having that conversation with them? And sometimes you just don't, and maybe it's time for a new job, which sounds terrible, but sometimes that's the case because those people potentially are never going to change. And do you really need that negativity in your heart? Like, oh God, blah. So it kind of covers off a lot of those kind of tools and tips on how to talk to those people, because sometimes people are just coming from, they're just not interested in changing or learning or doing something different or seeing things differently. And that's okay. Likelihood they have pick a neurodivergence of their own. Maybe they've got monotropic thinking, and I kind of cover that as well. And it's like, why do we have that black and white thinking? And what can we do to make it easier to communicate with people with that black and white thinking as well? So yes, I cover off quite a lot of it. I use a lot of research in the book as well to say, it's not just me flapping my lips at people. There's a lot of research. I've got an entire section just on the references I've used, because I've used a lot of, recent research as well, 2025 even, around how communication is, delivered, or things that people have researched around, management styles and neurotypical thinking and how it's different and etc. So I'm hoping that's really helpful.
I am certain that's going to be very helpful. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that just because somebody isn't the right leader or manager for you, or they're not the right, if they're not the right manager or leader for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad leader, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes different people just don't mesh, right? Like, and that's just the reality of it. But you're giving us tools to help navigate that, but also then know when to go, right? You're saying sometimes if it's not the right work environment, it's not the right leadership, and there's no coming from a place of curiosity and trying to understand or, betterment, maybe there is a better environment for you, right? And I think that's okay too. But sometimes people just have to have that courage to take that next step, because sometimes change can be scary, and even if you know it's the right thing to do. So again, this book can kind of be that permission slip to help all of that come together. There was another comment that came in while you were sharing that great information with us, and this person said they have ADHD and
Dyspraxic's just side note, it's one of my personal favorite indie styles, because it's so fascinating and so far reaching with regards to its impacts around fine motor skills and eye movements, and all of these really interesting dynamics. It's one of the less spoken about neurodivergencies, and it's just one of those that I find really interesting. I don't cover it a lot in the book, because in the book I focus a lot more on autism and ADHD and the 3 different types of ADHD, because that's my lived experience, but I do touch on dyslexia and dyspraxia. So really interesting, and that's quite a combination as well. Like those 3 together are almost like a triad of different thinking completely. Like those are conflicting, and also they kind of come together as well really nicely. But understand, like, sorry,
what I'm going to say is, I think that on that note, I want to just give props to you for creating a safe space where people feel comfortable talking about their diagnoses and where they're coming from. Like, I think this being a safe space for people to talk about where they're at, where they're coming from, and feeling safe and comfortable enough to share about it and talk about it, I think is a really huge starting point for this conversation. And that's really all you. And so I want to say thank you for that. And this person said that metaphors are really helpful for them, because we talked about metaphors earlier. And I think that's, again, coming from a place of understanding. I actually watched the TV show Loot last night. It's with Maya Rudolph.
Love Loot.
There's a part, the guy from Hangover, Ed, in the show, his name is Arthur. And he was having a conversation with another guy, and he used an idiom. And the guy was like, what? That doesn't even make sense. And Arthur goes, oh, it's an idiom. Come with me. I'll explain and tell you what it means. Now, I have a niece who is autistic, and she does not understand sarcasm, idioms, dry humor, and whatnot. So I think, again, this is a great conversation starter to better understand, because I use like dry humor all the time. But you have to understand your audience and know if that's something that people first get, and second, if they appreciate it, right?
And
So
that's so true.
That's what this conversation really is highlighting.
Absolutely. And I love that they mentioned, I get that, their way of understanding information is going to be the pictures and the outlines, and and I love that, because it means that we can start that conversation, right? That if we're doing a presentation and you and I are in the room, let's find a nice happy medium where we've got a really good mix of high level information and visual pictures and clarity, so that I don't get confused by all the metaphors.
So I would be curious. I don't know if this person that made that comment is still here, but what I would be really curious about is, have you had this conversation if you are in a role where you have a supervisor or a leader, like if you work in a corporate type of role, or a job where you have a manager or boss? Is this a conversation that you've had with your own manager, supervisor, or leader, so that they understand how you best learn and communicate? Like, I think that's really what so much of this conversation today boils down to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I'd be curious as well. I'd be like, how did that conversation go? Were they receptive, or were they like, oh, you silly banana? Like, I'd be so curious, because, sometimes, asking for that clarity or even simple accommodation. So my big fight at the moment at work is the lights on. So there's a secret like quiet space at work, and it's really bright. It's got beautiful open windows, so natural light coming in. But every person that comes in, because it's quiet space, it's usually just me sitting there because no one else wants to sit in the quiet space. They will want to sit in like the open plan office. Every person, I'm not kidding you, every person that comes in goes, "Oh, do you want me to switch on the lights?" And I'm like, no, please don't. And they're like, "Oh, are you sure?" I'm like, "I'm 100% sure that I do not need the lights on. Thank you." And they're like, "Are you sure? Because it's very dark in here." I'm like, I know. I'm aware. I've been here since like 6 a.m. Like, I know it's dark in here. So, like even that just as an accommodation, like I don't need to tell every person that's coming into the office on that floor, "Guys, my sensory load is too high, and when I'm being spoken at all day, I just need the lights off and quiet space." Like, you don't need to have that conversation every time you come in. So now it's just like, "No, guys, don't need the lights on. Thank you so much. Thanks for asking those. So thoughtful of you." But yeah, like it's those small things, right? It's like those little mini fights every day.
But when people understand, right? Like that's why this conversation is so important. And someone just left the nicest comment. Like maybe this is what we wrap with. They said, "Loving your conversation, Nicola and Ginny. I've learned so much from you both." I mean, I haven't said anything impactful or powerful. This is all Nicola. I just get to ask the questions and have her share her wisdom with us and get to be a part of it. How fun for me. Okay. And no, not in the workplace myself, but this is an area I'm working on too, managing, mapping the middle ground between different patterns in leadership and also in customer service. So again, this is great. Like, I love that people are sharing their different perspectives and experiences and kind of where they're mapping things out for themselves.
I never used to notice
Oh,
the
yeah, the lights off. Yep. So I think there's all those little idiosyncrasies. I don't know if that's what we can call them. I don't know if that's an appropriate word to use, but that, once you kind of see it, you can't unsee it, but it's great to have that understanding, for one another around it. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see where this book goes. Like I'm hopeful that it just, is a conversation starter for many people. I'm hoping that it is.
Well, it's going in people's Amazon carts right now. The
Right
link is
now.
going to be in the comments. So you're putting it in your carts. You're going to get it in your hands. You're going to read it. You're going to share it. You're going to post about it and tag Nicola. And then you're going to leave a review and a rating. That's where this book is going to go. I am so excited for people to get into the meat of it.
I'm hopeful. I'm really, really, really hopeful.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the comments.
All right. Is that us? Is that us for today?
We are at time. I mean, we're at just about an hour. So yeah.
Perfect. I love this for us. No other questions, give everyone like a last whip around before we head out.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun for me to get to be invited to be part of this conversation. It really means a lot.
Thank you for coming. It really means a lot to me that you were here as well. Thanks. Oh, all right. And, as Jenny says, links and details, etc., everywhere. QR code up in the corner here. We will have all the links and the details for where you can buy it. And I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing what people think about the book once they've read it.
Yay, me too. All right.
Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Bye.